Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This Christmas and these holidays are going to be different, and they need to be different.
BC extends COVID-19 restrictions on household and social gatherings into January. Also,
next week, we expect to receive our first delivery here in BC of the Pfizer vaccine.
BC's battle with the deadly virus gets a shot in the arm, with the first immunizations happening in weeks. And
it's something that absolutely has no basis in the faith.
A Surrey imam who misrepresented himself to immigration officials is jailed for sex assault. We hear from a victim who wants him deported.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. After weeks of our numbers trending in the wrong direction, it's official, holiday gatherings are now canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
BC government confirming it will extend existing restrictions into the new year. Dr. Bonnie Henry making the announcement along with today's update on numbers, which include another 35 deaths over the weekend. BC's death toll now stands at 527. And there are 2,020 new cases across the province from the weekend, and there are now more than 38,000 in total. A record 349 people are in hospital, 77 of those patients in critical care.
Active cases are now nearly at 9,400, and the number of people under active public health monitoring is now over 10,700. Of today's new cases, Fraser Health once again accounts for about 67%, and regions outside the Lower Mainland account for close to 17%.
And as mentioned, the province is extending its ban on social gatherings until January. Due to COVID-19, residents will only be able to socialize with people in their household.
Andrea Ross joins us live now with more details. So, Andrea, what exactly does this mean now for the holidays?
Well, Tanya, things are not going to be normal this year. The province has extended its restrictions on gatherings until January 8th. So until then, British Columbians can only socialize with people in their household. That means no large family gatherings for Hanukkah, Christmas, or New Year's, and no in-person religious services.
If you're used to having multiple family members come and go over Christmas and getting together and having those large dinners together, now you need to do it remotely.
Other restrictions will continue indefinitely, including the ban on high-intensity group fitness classes and adult sports teams. There is one small amendment giving groups a little more flexibility. It allows for drive-through and drive-and-sit events like toy drives and light shows, as well as small religious gatherings of no more than 50 cars. Bonnie Henry says the restrictions are making a difference, but that it is too early to ease up.
It's not yet at a point where we can let off on some of the restrictions that we have in place. And very much, the next incubation period would take us to just the week, a few days before the Christmas holiday. Hanukkah starts this week. So there are important events that are happening, and we want people to recognize that this is something we're going to need to stick with until into the new year.
So, Andrea, the restrictions going till January 8th, but it wasn't all bad news today. What did we learn about when a vaccine is going to be made available?
Well, this is the good news. Dr. Henry says the province will receive its first small shipment of COVID-19 vaccine next week. As for who gets it first, it'll be those most at risk.
Our ability to start protecting elders and seniors, particularly in our care homes, and the healthcare workers who care for them, will be an important step forward in our COVID-19 struggle.
BC will receive the Pfizer vaccine, which needs to be kept extremely cold at -80 Celsius. So that limits where the vaccine can be kept in the province. Henry says the province will have more information on its vaccine rollout plan later this week. She previously said she believes all British Columbians will be able to get vaccinated by next September. A light at the end of the tunnel, but Henry says we need to keep up the efforts to reduce transmission in the meanwhile. Mike?
All right, thanks so much, Andrea. That's our Andrea Ross reporting live for us tonight. And so what is that vaccine distribution plan going to look like exactly? Well, coming up in just a few minutes, we will look at the federal plan as the rollout begins next week. Officials are looking into a COVID-19 outbreak, meantime, at a mink farm in the Fraser Valley.
It's unclear how the virus was transmitted, but concerns are growing tonight because the virus has been known to spread between mink and people. Greg Rasmussen explains.
BC's Fraser Valley has 14 mink farms, and 8 people on one of them have tested positive for COVID-19. Authorities aren't releasing the location, but say the farm is locked down.
So it is of great concern for us, and we are working closely with WorkSafe BC to ensure that all of the measures on the farm are being done appropriately.
In Denmark, 17 million animals were culled after it was found COVID-19 was going back and forth between mink and people, mutating along the way. The fear is those mutations could make the virus resistant to vaccines and treatments.
Our antibodies that we are going to develop by vaccination or natural exposure may not work because now the structure of the virus changed, and now it's not recognized by the antibodies.
Testing is underway to see if the disease has spread from the BC workers into the mink at the farm. About 1 million mink pelts are produced in Canada every year. Industry representatives say biosecurity is taken seriously and the risk to people is low.
Fortunately, we see some activist groups that have long opposed mink farming and would like to end it, who are jumping on this and exploiting this situation for their own purposes to try to say we should just shut down the mink farms.
The United States has had several outbreaks on mink farms, but no widespread cull. This lab in Wisconsin is involved in testing and tracing the disease.
We get very concerned about viruses moving back and forth between people and animals. What's the absolute risk of mink? I think the jury is still out on that. We haven't noticed the mutations that the Danish saw.
He says it's important because mink and their relatives are similar to humans in ways that make them vulnerable to COVID-19 and other respiratory infections. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Vancouver.
For 16 years, a Surrey imam from Pakistan misrepresented himself to immigration officials so he could stay in Canada.
When the centrifuge caught up with him, he was ordered to leave the country. And while that process made its way through the system, he was charged and convicted of sexual assault.
Abdur Rahman Khan is now in prison. CBC Impact reporter Belle Puri spoke to his victim, who says if immigration officials and the BC Muslim Association had intervened sooner, the attack may never have happened.
The emotional wounds are raw.
Especially my community, they think I am wrong. They didn't support me.
A victim of sexual assault, her identity is protected by court order.
When I go outside and when the people see me who know me, right, they think I am not good woman because I got with priest and put in the jail.
Surrey Imam Abdur Rahman Khan was convicted of sexual assault in January. In August, he was sent to jail for 3 years and his name added to the sex offender registry. While on bail and waiting trial, and after he was convicted waiting for sentencing, he continued as imam at a Surrey mosque. The BC Muslim Association says at no time was BCMA made aware of the serious allegations and criminal charges against Khan. As the individual is no longer an employee, we cannot comment further. The president of the BCMA says Khan's resignation letter cited a personal matter, so the association didn't ask questions. A member of the BCMA's Women's Council initially said it was important to face the issue, then reneged on an interview. Others acknowledge speaking freely about abuse is a problem.
Why this happens, I'm going to call it a misconstrued sense of honor.
Khan's attempts to live in Canada span almost 3 decades. In 1993, he was a dependent in an application to sponsor his mother to Canada. His permanent residency was denied. He appealed, but he didn't wait for a decision. During the appeal process, Khan got a visitor visa under a different name. Once in Canada, he made a refugee claim under yet another name. When that was refused, Khan tried to stay here through the sponsorship of a wife. At his immigration hearing, he conceded the marriage wasn't genuine and solely for immigration purposes. Khan was deported. In a strange twist, 2 years later, he was accepted as a permanent resident under the original 1993 application. His deceit with immigration also involved multiple marriages, although he had a wife and 5 children in Pakistan. Despite the lies and his criminal conviction, Khan's stay in Canada could extend beyond his stay in jail.
Once the person's finished his sentence is when CBSA actually actions the removal order. At that time, it's possible that the applicant moves federal court to be able to stay the removal order. And in which case, then it spins into a circle of, how long and things like that.
That worries Khan's victim.
I am scared because I don't know what will he do after he's finished his sentencing.
She says there'll be no closure until he's out of the country for good. Belle Puri, CBC News, Surrey.
Well, just over a year ago, flames ripped through a Chilliwack condo, forcing dozens of people out of their homes.
Now, several owners say the building was underinsured.
And as Michelle Gassoub reports, they say that's left them with massive bills and nowhere to live.
Me and my roommate, we were both asleep in our apartment, and the fire alarms went off, and we evacuated the building with everyone out here.
In late 2019, Derek Wubbs woke up to the smell of smoke. He made it out of his condo before flames reached his unit, but that was only the start of his troubles.
And then a few days later, they called a general meeting of all the owners where they explained that they were underinsured.
Uninsured to the tune of $4 million. Because he didn't buy optional homeowner insurance, he's now on the line for those costs.
Right now, I am facing a $37,000 levy with a promise of a second round of levies coming, as well as additional fees for garbage pickup, snow removal, power, when we're not even living here, plus loss of somewhere to live for a year and 4 months now.
Even those well-versed in strata laws say determining who is responsible for underinsurance is complicated.
It gets messy when something like this happens because it's very difficult sometimes to have evidence as to who was responsible for being underinsured. But, again, it goes back to the same problem. The owners end up paying the price for this, which is extremely unfair.
Phone calls and emails from CBC News to the strata and the management company have gone unanswered. The company, Glenair Home Life Advantage Realty, has told owners they accept no responsibility.
Because the strata is just owners with extra time on their hands. They're underqualified, they're inexperienced, so they go to a strata management company for this exact reason. And Glenair Home Life Realty did not follow through.
Webb says at least 6 other owners are in the same position. He's now living with his parents, trying to save money, and warning other condo owners to make sure they're properly covered. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, the Lieutenant Governor has delivered the speech from the throne, officially opening the 42nd Parliament in BC.
And today, a new speaker was also chosen to preside over the BC legislature, marking a historic day in the House.
Mr. Speaker, congratulations.
The first session of this new government began with Raj Chauhan becoming the first speaker in the country to be of Indian descent.
I'm humbled to have your support and trust.
Premier John Horgan addressed the chamber as Chauhan took the speaker's chair for the first time in his new role.
The first Sikh, the first Punjabi-speaking speaker of any legislature outside of the subcontinent is you. So to have you now sit in that chair, coming from the fields and now sitting overseeing the Commons for all British Columbians is truly extraordinary.
Interim Liberal leader Shirley Bond also congratulated Chauhan on behalf of the opposition.
This chamber needs to reflect the faces of all British Columbians. And I think that today, Mr. Speaker, we have taken a major step in that direction.
Chauhan says he takes the title of Speaker with great honor.
To get here had been a long journey. Never ever thought that one day I would be in this position when I immigrated to Canada in 1973.
A few hours later, the Lieutenant Governor made her way into the House to deliver the throne speech. It provides a blueprint of government priorities, and this time it's centered entirely around the pandemic.
We did not choose the challenge of COVID-19, but we are meeting it.
Janet Austin read a throne speech written by the NDP government that was focused on all things COVID.
Preparations are underway for when a vaccine is available. The focus will be on distributing it to British Columbians quickly and safely, beginning with those most at risk.
The speech hinted at new tax measures coming that will reward businesses for hiring. The province is also planning to move ahead with more healthcare investments with three main goals: treat more patients at home, reduce wait times, and hire more doctors and nurses.
A champion of civil rights and social justice for British Columbians has died. Joseph Arve made a career of standing up for the liberties of people in our province and across the country. He worked pro bono with the BC Civil Liberties Association for 3 decades and was part of many landmark cases. That includes a long fight against censorship and LGBTQ discrimination by customs officials that prompted 2 Supreme Court of Canada decisions. He also represented the BCCLA in the Supreme Court case establishing the constitutional right to physician-assisted dying. The organization says many of his greatest achievements would have been impossible without his work. Joseph Arve was 71.
One man has been taken to the hospital after a shooting in Port Coquitlam this morning that police believe was targeted. RCMP responded to reports of shots fired in the 1500 block of Broadway Street at around 9:30 a.m. When officers arrived, they found a man with gunshot wounds. He was taken to the ER with undetermined injuries. No arrests have been made, but a black vehicle was seen speeding away from the scene, and investigators are now asking any drivers who may have any relevant dash cam footage to turn it in.
It is a significant move and came as a significant surprise to many. The Prime Minister announcing first doses of the Pfizer vaccine should be here soon, earlier than anticipated.
And Justin Trudeau says Canada will have 250,000 by the end of December. It is welcome news, but far from the tens of millions of doses required to get back to normal.
And as David Cochrane reports, receiving vaccines and getting them into people's arms are 2 very different things.
As Christmas gifts go, a COVID vaccine is at the top of the list, and it may arrive just in time.
We are now contracted to receive up to 249,000 of our initial doses of Pfizer BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine in the month of December. Pending Health Canada approval, the first shipment of doses is tracking for delivery next week.
Next week to 14 distribution points across the country. The shipments will start small and then ramp up, allowing provincial health systems time to adapt and start vaccinating quickly after delivery.
It's a matter of a day or 2, is my understanding, based on the fact that once you receive the product, you have to unpack, thaw, decant, mix. So that's a relatively fast process for the health professionals.
Getting vaccines first to the most vulnerable people is exactly what we need to do, and that's what we're focused on.
But Pfizer's vaccine is delicate and needs to be stored at extremely cold temperatures, which means it will only ship to urban centers in each province, which have the freezers and the people to handle it. And so the territories and remote Indigenous communities will, for now, have to wait for sturdier vaccines that are easier to ship.
There will be more doses of other vaccines at later dates on a priority basis for Indigenous peoples, particularly those who are northern and remote.
Each person who gets the Pfizer vaccine needs 2 doses, so these initial shipments will be enough for about 125,000 people. The first steps in a big job that won't be done until tens of millions of Canadians get their vaccines. David Cochrane, CBC News, Ottawa.
One of the largest long-term care operators in Canada says all provinces should adopt surveillance testing of staff and visitors at care facilities. It's also calling for multi-bed rooms to be phased out.
The report from Rivera, which operates 18 centers here in BC, comes amid renewed scrutiny over how operators have handled COVID-19 outbreaks. As Ellen Morrow reports now, for families with loved ones still relying on long-term care, those kinds of changes can't come soon enough.
My grandfather is the most resilient, strong, and gracious human being I think I will ever know.
Emily Ladowitz's grandfather, Heinz Ziebel, lives at Carlingview Manor, a Rivera-run home in Ottawa.
We have seen declines in him physically, emotionally, cognitively. He certainly expresses to me daily that he is lonely.
Ladowitz says staff work hard, but she says systemic issues have sometimes left her unhappy with the level of care.
That's not because the staff weren't trying. It is a system level issue. To see older adults, hunched over in their wheelchair or chair for hours alone is not okay. That is not excellent care.
Today, Rivera, one of Canada's largest operators of retirement and long-term care homes, released this report detailing the perfect storm leading to the pandemic's deadly toll on its facilities. It says all provinces should adopt surveillance testing of staff and visitors at long-term care homes. Provinces and operators must fix chronic understaffing, and multi-bed rooms must be phased out.
We put all our emphasis in the hospital sector, but we didn't learn fast enough about the risks that our long-term care were about to undergo.
The report places much of the blame on various levels of government. It's not overly critical of Rivera itself, though the operator is facing a class action lawsuit. Donna Raymond's mother, Stella, contracted COVID at a Rivera home in the spring. Raymond says she's satisfied overall with the level of care, but she worries about her mother's mental health and a Christmas like no other.
It's tough enough on us, but her, it's going to be devastating.
Ladowitz is worried too.
I'm scared that I will never be able to hug my grandfather again. I am scared that he's going to die alone.
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's go live now to meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe, hanging out tonight somewhere in the atmospheric river.
That's right. Yeah, I'm pretty much right in the middle of the river. I should have the hip waders on with the river surging across the south coast as we speak. We're actually, believe it or not, in a bit of a break right now. The raindrops are fine, as you might be able to tell here in East Vancouver. The next surge on its way across the strait. Heaviest of the rain will be falling overnight into tomorrow morning. Let me show you what this looks like on the radar. I've jam-packed this board. I've actually put on the temperatures because this is a subtropical flow. It's tapping into moisture and an air mass all the way from the Hawaiian Islands. So yes, this is a true Pineapple Express event. Temperatures hitting the double digits across the south coast today, and it'll do the same tomorrow. And we really won't see temperatures drop too much overnight tonight. So after a weekend and a week last week of some freezing overnights, we are definitely feeling different tonight. You can see the main mass of moisture just getting ready to cross the strait right now. Rainfall warnings are in place for Metro Vancouver, the Fraser Valley, Howe Sound, and parts of the island. I'll talk more about just how much rain we're going to get and if we've got any breaks ahead. Hint, don't get your hopes up. It is a showery week, but I think we'll get behind the river coming up soon. Details just ahead.
Well, if that's what swimming in a river looks like, Johanna, you make it look just spectacular. Well done. We'll talk to you soon. Well, for the past few weeks, we've been looking at how the pandemic has affected the arts community in particular. And tonight we bring you the last in this 4-part series.
For many of us, a night at the movies used to be one of life's simple pleasures, but movie theaters, of course, had to close earlier this month.
And as our Marie Zeidler tells us, some independent cinemas are worried they simply won't survive.
Movie theaters are pretty lonely places these days. The smell of popcorn doesn't waft through the lobby. Projection rooms have gone dark.
The Cinematheque closed in March at the start of the pandemic, and like many arts and cultures organisations, we had to come up with new and creative ways to engage with our audience.
The Pacific Cinematheque in downtown Vancouver did briefly reopen this summer. Its capacity was reduced to about 1/3, but now it's only showing movies online.
We've had a really wide variety of films that we've shown. So most recently, we've just finished our 23rd annual European Union Film Festival, the first online edition of that.
The Cinematheque has joined a competitive marketplace for streaming films, but the theatre is confident that offering films by directors like Fellini and Wong Kar-wai will make it unique.
People really value a way to support the Cinematheque still by through purchasing tickets. And also being able to access some of these films that, despite the kind of wealth of online screening opportunities, some of these films are still not accessible out there. So.
In many ways, the Cinematheque is one of the lucky ones during this pandemic, in part because they operate as a non-profit. For privately owned independent cinemas, the struggle is real.
Chris and I, like anybody else, have to consider the very real reality that we may not survive.
The Ravenscry Theatre in Sechelt has been around for 30 years. It's the only cinema in its community, a hub not only for movies but also cultural events. Jessie August and her nephew bought it in 2019.
I don't think we really could have asked for a better first year.
Just as they were celebrating their first anniversary as a business, the pandemic started. The theatre has been closed ever since.
Being one of those entities to potentially spread a virus is not something that we want to do. So yeah, we want to be really cautious.
The theatre has gotten by these past few months with some help from the federal government and the Sechelt First Nation. Now there's nothing to do but hope the theatre survives and its legacy can continue.
Like, I mean, it'll never go away. I'm hoping that Chris and I are the ones that are able to carry that forward.
Marie Seidler, CBC News, Vancouver.
All right, last Friday was, of course, CBC Open House Food Bank Day. No open house because of the pandemic, but boy, our viewers and listeners are very generous. When we signed off on Friday night at about 7 o'clock, the total was at $1.7 million back on Friday.
Yes, and over the weekend, it only grew. We surpassed the $2 million mark and then some. Look at this new total, $2,360,295. That blew the old record right out of the water. So spectacular donations. Thank you so much for that. And a reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on the free CBC Gem app.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
When you think of the healthcare system overburdened by COVID-19, you might picture the emergency room, but coming up, why it's the family doctor who's facing the biggest impact of the coronavirus. Stay with us.
And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, it has been a very busy few days for a group of elementary school students in Winnipeg.
They have written hundreds of letters for complete strangers who could use some good cheer. As Nellie Gonzalez tells us, the messages are going to those who've been affected by COVID-19 the most.
Hi, my name is Kiara, and I'm in grade 4. And this is a card for a senior. Hi, friend. I hope you have a great Christmas, especially right now. Fun C4D at White Ridge School.
Words of support and hope from Kiara and many of our classmates here.
Hi, my name is Alexis, and I'm in grade 4, and this is my letter for hospital staff. Dear hospital staff, you are the stars in everyone's darkness, saving lives, trying to find a cure for COVID. Thank you for working hard, trying to help save lives.
We are also thankful for your sacrifice and help to save people's lives. You all work your butts off just to help us. What would we do without you?
I hope you have joyful holidays. Don't forget to stay safe and happy. A very Merry Christmas from 3-4D at White Ridge School.
The idea started as part of a local radio campaign encouraging people to send cards to seniors who are alone during the holidays. But these kids took that idea even further, expanding the project to include Christmas cards for hospital staff and patients who are currently sick with COVID-19.
They kept asking, well, who are we going to write a card for next?
Kathy Dudich says her students embraced the idea, and she couldn't be more proud.
We talked about how service and helping others doesn't have to cost money. It comes from the heart. And when I read their cards, that's what comes out, is their heart and their personality and how important and how excited they are about these cards.
Now the entire school is taking part. More than 400 letters will now be sent to seniors living at the convalescent home of Winnipeg and staff and patients in ICU at St. Boniface Hospital.
I think the patients really need encouragement right now because it's really hard for them and they're in the hospital and they can't see their families, and I think that's just really sad.
And
details to one of your cards.
Dudich says she's trying to keep the kids hopeful about the future.
There's lots of things that are out of our control right now, and we're missing lots of things, and we're disappointed in lots of things, but I thought it was important for the kids to change that mindset.
Dear patient, I hope you a Merry Christmas. I hope you feel better.
Nellie Gonzalez, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Good for them.
Yeah, very nice.
Especially this time of year. We can all use that. We'll be back in just a few moments with more news on COVID-19 from across Canada and around the world.
When we think of the medical impact of COVID-19, many of us may think of ventilators, of overflowing emergency rooms and ICUs. But COVID-19 touches family doctors too. Vicadopia shows us that family practices under pressure mean pressure throughout the system.
He's a new doctor in one of Canada's poorest neighborhoods, known as Park X, which has high rates of COVID-19.
I'm not going to lie, I definitely feel almost defeated at times.
Asylum seekers and recent immigrants are a big part of Sherwani's practice. Most patients consult with him over the phone, which is a struggle, not just because of language, but trying to diagnose symptoms when he can't examine his patients.
Now what I'm seeing is when people are consulting with abdominal issues, is that I'm going straight to ordering ultrasound, straight to ordering blood tests, and I know that's also a strain on the system.
Remote family medicine has improved access to healthcare for some, but this psychiatrist who treats other doctors says many are more worried than ever about their patients.
Just to get those nuances that, would be much readily seen in person, but you don't want to miss anything. You want to make sure that you fully understand what the patient is saying without the help of all the body language you would have in the office.
An even bigger challenge when patients are elderly, like this doctor's.
She's crying. Mood-wise, how do you think she is?
Dr. Iris Gorfinkel says she's also sending her patients for more frequent tests and referrals. And wait times for x-rays, ultrasounds, and blood tests are getting longer. That's on top of the long-term needs of some COVID patients.
Instantly, you're referring to a cardiologist. You're referring to a respirologist. Like, do the math in your mind about what's happening. They may have some blood problems, so it could be a hematologist. If they've lost their sense of smell or taste, you're talking about a neurologist.
Which often leads to more tests in a system that's already taxed.
Blood test requisition.
Vicadopia, CBC News, Toronto.
As part of its pandemic relief effort, the federal government has directed millions of dollars to address domestic violence. As Shayna Luck reports, groups who received funding say the need for support continues to grow.
What are some of the things that you remember doing?
Todd Augusta Scott's work counseling a man who's been abusive to his partner can be seen in this documentary. He's seen even more families than usual this year at the Bridges Centre in Truro.
And so, just being left at home with each other without those kind of supports that financial and social and otherwise has been, very stressful for a lot of families, for sure.
As schools, small businesses, and healthcare services closed down one after another this spring, Augusta Scott watched his waiting list for counseling grow longer and longer.
The biggest factor has just been the increase in numbers that we've seen at Bridges. So there's been an increase of, 20 to 30%, over the prior year.
Bridges is one of 28 organizations in Nova Scotia that received a total of almost $1.2 million from the federal government. The organizations included domestic violence shelters, sexual assault centers, and counseling services. Another round of funding is set to arrive before Christmas.
It's a time of crisis and darkness, but I think people showed up for us, so that was really good, both levels of government, and also individual people and business community members.
But Norpana says although organizations are grateful for the boost this year, there is a continuing need for sustainable funding.
Temporary emergency funding is great and it's needed, but our sector should not have been so underfunded in the first place.
The worry now is the need for shelters and counselors has only increased, and the funding that's arrived so far might be a one-time only deal. Shayna Lux, CBC News, Halifax.
The national chief of the Assembly of First Nations says he won't be running for another term. Harry Bellegarde has been in the role since 2014. He says he's proud of the work he's done to protect Indigenous children and languages, and he's also helped secure more than $27 billion in funding. Bellegarde highlighted his work to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. He will address First Nations chiefs this week at a virtual General Assembly. The group elects a national chief every 3 years to represent more than 600 First Nations. Bellegarde's replacement is set to be selected next summer.
Well, December is the most dangerous time of the year on BC roads, with a spike in crashes involving pedestrians. Some experts are offering up safety solutions. We'll tell you what they are after the break.
We invite you to visualize the Vancouver of the future, all symbolized by Canada Place.
Prime Minister Trudeau launched a new trade and convention centre and cruise ship facility plan for Pure BC today. Canada Place is supposed to open by 1986 in time for Expo. The design is based on ships with a sail-like cable roof in Teflon or silicone, soaring above the convention center.
This project, it's symbolically measuring the beginning of another stage when we will have reached the high technology, the sophistication which permits Canada to become whole in another way. Not only it is whole in itself, but it is beginning to reach out beyond.
At the water end of the pier, there's a multi-level restaurant, an observation deck, an amphitheater, and another theater. At the land end, private enterprise will build a 500-room hotel. The government's $137 million gamble is supposed to pay off with 2,200 jobs and bring Vancouver $75 million in convention business every year. Andrea Maitland, CBC News, Vancouver.
Toys, thousands of them. Presents for the needy. Donated to the Vancouver Christmas Bureau and piled high in the Student Union building at UBC. So who's behind this enormous act of charity? Bikers, that's who. 1,000 of them, from clean-cut touring riders to wild-eyed greasers. They call it the Christmas Toy Run, a 5-mile-long parade snaking its way through Burnaby and Vancouver to UBC, the largest ever gathering of motorcycles in Western Canada. And the bikes came dressed for the occasion, as did some of the bikers.
Santa Claus.
Yeah.
What happened to the reindeer?
Well, today Santa Claus usually rides a motorcycle when it's sunny out.
You got no respect for tradition?
No.
Why not?
Well, gotta feed reindeer, see? Cheaper with a motorcycle.
And while some of them may not have rushed right over from church, it surely didn't matter to the Christmas Bureau.
It's just marvelous. Last year they had about 250 bikes and brought in over 500 toys. This year they've got 1,000 bikes and I don't know how many toys.
Organizers estimate the take at up to 2,000 toys, which will go a long way to making a lot of needy kids happy this Christmas. Harry Phillips, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
If you're used to having multiple family members come and go over Christmas and getting together and having those large dinners together, now you need to do it remotely.
BC's provincial health officer is extending restrictions on social gatherings for another month. Dr. Bonnie Henry says residents will continue to only be able to socialize with people in their own household until January 8th at midnight. All events and gatherings remain banned until that time as well, with the exception of drive-through and drop-off events such as toy drives and light shows.
And Dr. Henry is also reporting 35 more deaths from COVID-19 and 2,020 new cases over the weekend. BC's death toll now stands at 527. A total of 349 people are in hospital tonight, 77 of those patients in intensive care. There is some good news. Dr. Henry says BC expects to receive a small amount of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine next week.
If somebody is the victim of a crime, then that's no reason to sort of ostracize them from the rest of the community, to shame them in any way.
Local faith leaders speak up in support of a victim. For 16 years, a Surrey imam from Pakistan misrepresented himself to immigration officials so that he could stay in Canada. When it caught up with him, he was ordered to leave the country. And while that process made its way through the system, he was charged and convicted of sexual assault. Abdur Rahman Khan is now in prison. His victim spoke to CBC News and says if there had been intervention sooner, the attack may never have happened.
Well, this is the most dangerous time of the year on BC roads.
Thousands of people are injured and dozens killed each December in the province.
As our John Hernandez is finding out, experts say there are ways to drive those numbers down.
This was the scene in New Westminster on Saturday. A woman using the crosswalk when she was struck by a car, sent to hospital in critical condition. That same afternoon, a similar story in Coquitlam, where another pedestrian was also sent to hospital. December is the most dangerous month on BC roads. On average, 6,000 people are injured in crashes. Another 30 are killed.
So we have longer night hours and also bad weather.
Those walking the streets are particularly vulnerable, especially at major intersections like this notoriously busy one in Vancouver.
Sometimes I'm thinking, are they gonna stop?
I think probably any big city, drivers are more lax about rules and regulations.
Because it's very difficult to change people's behavior.
A study from this UBC engineering professor found that the most walkable and bikeable streets also happen to be the most dangerous.
We have many right turns, left turns, short blocks with a lot of interactions and side activities, business activities.
And while distracted driving campaigns, along with calls for reflective clothing, have been BC's weapon of choice, the experts say there are other, more effective tools.
And in many cases, these cost-effective solutions come from a change to the traffic control and infrastructure.
Solutions like a scramble phase at busy intersections where traffic is stopped in all directions, or what's called a leading pedestrian interval, where walkers get a head start over vehicles when crossing the road. And one of the simplest changes, reducing speed limits. Vancouver is piloting all three options.
We engineers should not allow anybody to be injured or killed on our roads. It's our product, and we are responsible for this product.
A product used by just about everyone and claims unsuspecting lives in BC each year. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, here's a challenge. Explain quantum tunneling. You have 3 minutes to do it. Well, that's daunting for some. One Alberta teen took it as a personal challenge. We'll tell you why it landed her a $250,000 scholarship next.
6:43, a live look at soggy Vancouver tonight. It's a nice sunny start to December, but things are looking much more typical for this time of year. Plenty of rain in the days ahead. How much and how wet is it going to get? Joe has the answers next.
Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates. Rebate? Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
An Alberta teen has become the first Canadian to win a prestigious international science award. Mariam Sigai, a grade 12 student from Fort McMurray, won the Breakthrough Junior Challenge. It's a competition that asks students from around the world to create videos explaining complex scientific principles to the public. So the 17-year-old created a 3-minute video explaining quantum tunneling.
Imagine if you could walk through walls in real life. And it turns out you can, at a quantum level. We're talking on a scale of the stuff that make up atoms. Strange things happen at a quantum level. For one thing, all subatomic particles, they've got split personalities. One personality is a wave and the other one's a particle, but they're still one being. When you want to know where they are, they seem like a particle. And when you want to know what they're doing, they behave like waves. But you can't ask both personalities at the same time. Basically, they've got some serious commitment issues, and that means we can only guess where they might be.
Understood all of that, for sure. In the end, she beat out 5,600 other students to win the top prize. Get this, it comes with a scholarship of $250,000 US, $100,000 toward a science lab for her high school, and 50 grand cash to the teacher who inspired her. So congratulations to her. That is pretty impressive.
You know, I feel like Johanna
Super cool.
Wagstaffe would give her a run for her money. I've heard you talk like that, your scientific terms, when you get, you know, all smart on us.
I will take that as a compliment because she was awesome.
She
I feel
was.
like we need to put that on TikTok, and then all of a sudden parents would let kids be on TikTok forever.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm gonna see if she's available for an intern or something. Very cool. Well, I'm not gonna break it down with a fancy graphic. Let's use the temperature maps that I may need to add some smiley faces to. Check out the current temperatures out there right now. We are a little mild, tapping into that subtropical air mass, as I mentioned. 9 right now at YVR, 8 down towards Victoria Airport. Here's that southwesterly flow, the fire hose, so to speak, in the upper levels of our atmosphere, directing the moisture and temperatures all the way from the Hawaiian Islands. So yes, True Pineapple Express, as I mentioned earlier, bringing the rainfall warnings. Metro Vancouver, we could see upwards of 90 millimeters by tomorrow afternoon. The west side of Tofino, West Vancouver Island, I should say, including Tofino, upwards of 150 millimeters. And then as the system moves inland, it's a snow story for the Trans-Canada, Rogers Pass, and the Columbia region. 25 centimeters by tomorrow afternoon. So let's time this out for us. There is still heavier rain to come for Metro Vancouver. Most of it will be falling overnight and pre-dawn hours. A pretty wet commute for people out on the roads or the streets. But by mid-morning, we'll actually start to see it lighten up. I don't see a big return to blue skies. The edge of that atmospheric river still has a lot of cloud. I think the clearing that we'll get won't be until Tuesday overnight into Wednesday, as you can see here. And that is our best chance of any sunny breaks is Wednesday morning. Scattered showers I'll also have to include in that forecast, but we do have a bit of a break between systems so we can get through the deluge of rain tomorrow morning. That low pressure system sort of directing the atmospheric river inland. So you can see by tomorrow night starting to get some clearing as a little mini high pressure system almost builds in for Wednesday mid-morning. It doesn't stay for long. We get the next system bringing the showers back for Thursday and Friday and onward. It is a bit of a soggy long range forecast. Getting the wet showers and wet snow and showers tonight in through the southern interior. Maybe some sunny breaks in through Cranbrook and Dease Lake. You are above that river, so nice sunny breaks for you as well. So lots of rain tomorrow morning, but drying out towards the afternoon. Hoping for some sunny breaks on Wednesday as temperatures come down a bit behind that atmospheric river, but also a chance of some showers in there as well, but a drier Wednesday than the other days anyway. Showers return for Thursday and Friday. Not a washout at this point. I think we'll see showers ramp up again for the weekend as temperatures cool down a bit. And I've already had some 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds ask me about the chance of snow for Christmas in Vancouver, and not looking good, but I will keep watching that. I owe it to the 4-year-olds out there, see if I can find a chance.
Well, if anyone can do it, it's you. In the meantime, we'll brace for more rain. Thanks so much, Johanna.
You're welcome.
Well, a visit with Santa might not be in the cards this holiday season, but still ahead, we'll tell you how one New Brunswick community is stepping up for a new holiday tradition in a socially distanced kind of way. Stay with us.
Like stripping back what we're used to with like boring Zoom meetings and taking this up a notch and kind of creating this experience that people can kind of enjoy with their loved ones and with their colleagues.
Welcome, welcome. How's everyone feeling tonight? Drop me an emoji. Let me know how y'all doing. So obviously December is usually a time of celebrating with our colleagues, with our friends and family. And so obviously with things looking a bit different this year, I thought we could still recreate this experience for people. And so I had the thought that I would love to collaborate with other local businesses to recreate and mimic the experience of having a holiday party, but at home and safely.
This is sort of like a sample kit that you would get. All you need is really just a lemon. I have this beautiful little jar of apricot jam because we're gonna make a smoked apricot hot toddy, and it's super delicious. You don't need fancy bar tools. You only need to use your creativity and things you have around the kitchen.
What are the elements needed to make a virtual party really great?
When I talk to individuals that are wanting to host events, I always ask them to think about as many senses that you can engage with your audience, because that's how they're going to feel connected to the experience that you're putting on. Is as much senses that you can stimulate without overwhelming them is really important.
When I paint on my non-dominant hand, if I'm just holding the brush like this, I would push up and I would actually just move my finger. Since the first lockdown, I essentially went virtual and I literally opened up both of my client books and I walked everybody through how to take off their shellacs, how to take off their dip manicures, how to take off acrylic nails, and to do it in a way that's actually safe.
Bottom of your deck, you have the Chariot card. And the Chariot is this vehicle for success.
I felt like even though we're not in the same room and we're talking to each other over laptops, that you were finding a way to genuinely connect with me.
For me, this is a way to connect really deeply, really quickly with someone. And the most beautiful part is, I feel like once we enter this Zoom room where we're doing an uplifting tarot reading, we both drop it. We drop it all and we show up as ourselves. It's a really vulnerable space. And there's just this instant connection.
I think this whole lockdown now in the second one is really forcing us to get creative with how we can connect with others and looking beyond, like a Zoom meeting and we just kind of sit there and give each other an update. But it's like, how can we elevate this to not just be an event, but to be more of an experience of how we can, connect with others, but also have a bit of fun, because everyone, I think, is craving that, those times and those moments of connection when it's really hard to do that right now.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Warm your home with holiday favorites and luminous carols with Corleone Men's Choir. RSVP today for this all-digital concert from the comfort of home at corleone.org. And calling all British Columbians, this holiday season, be kind and you could win exclusive CBC prizes. Learn how to enter at cbc.ca/acts of kindness.
Welcome back. A New Brunswick business is aiming to spread some holiday cheer at a distance during these pandemic times.
Yeah, they've set out a display featuring wooden reindeer standing 2 meters high and painted by local students in the hopes of lifting spirits.
I actually seen an old picture of Murphyville every Christmas. They had a nice big light show. About 10 years ago, they stopped that. So I'm going to turn the tradition around to Dornville.
Oh, I think it's so awesome. I think it's beautiful, and at night it's really nice with all the lights here.
We got nine reindeer that we made up in the garage there probably about 3 weeks ago. And we actually had 9 local schools paint them up. They could paint it pink, purple, however they felt. And I think by the look of them, they did an awesome job.
So I saw that one at my school, and I didn't know what they were making. So first of all, I thought it was a moose, but it's a reindeer.
I only wish my 2 grandchildren were here to see it from BC. That's why I'm taking pictures, because I want to send it out and show them.
Being in retail, being in this time, I just feel for everybody being in this spot that we are. It's been tough, but we're still here. We have to. We're going to get through it, and I'm trying to do my part to help that out. Just want people to feel good.
Probably will.
From reindeer to moose, and from the East Coast now back to the West Coast here. This is one of those only in Canada stories.
Yes, a woman in northern BC got quite the visit from some locals last week. Jill Squires says they had some morning visitors in Dawson Creek who couldn't resist coming close for a nuzzle against the window with their pup Crosby. Mama Moose and her 2 calves were friendly enough until they started tucking into Squire's plants.
She says they love her apple trees and shrubs, but enough was enough, so she and Crosby politely but firmly asked them to leave. So,
guys, go on, away from my plants.
There's plants growing, I guess. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Squire says Moose drop by for weekly visits in the winter and are generally very well behaved.
Again, doesn't get much more Canadian than that, right? Well behaved and polite moose.
Love it. All right, just a reminder, you can always watch this newscast online, cbc.ca/BC.
And our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock with Dan Britt right after the National. And we leave you now with some footage of the 2nd annual Fleur de Ville Noel Festival. It pairs some of Vancouver's florists with local retailers to create 30 unique pop-up installations along Robson and Alberni streets. It runs until Sunday. There you have it. Good night.
Have a good night.